Hello. Like how our calls with John, our friend John, always begin with "Hello." It's become a thing, like the belly button in Seinfeld. So, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. We're gonna talk about prison. That's a cliffhanger. We will though. However, I had the return of I thought of something yesterday, and it kind of was in a something cool vein.
Oh shit! Cool. Nobody reminded me.
Well, no, I'm not. Hold on, I didn't mean to start a thing. I just had something that came to me.
Too late. It's back.
Better than on you.
No, wow. Okay, just gonna go right for the throat.
You said.
I did.
You said there's no rules anymore. It's after Freedom Day. We're just storytellers. The show.
So now we're talking about hot jizz on our faces.
Awesome. Well, Dave went where I was not gonna go.
I said nothing about faces. I just said the entirety of his being.
Do you guys remember the time that we talked about collapsing Worst Show Ever into Story Studio podcast?
And Dave was like, no.
Dave was like, well, how is it going to be ridiculous? Actually that's okay, so hold on, before I get to my thing, I have two things.
I'm already so happy.
Number one is that we are going to have the last episode of Worst Show Ever. I don't know when though, so just eventually. Like, there you go, that's the announcement, because we're going to kind of fold them in together to have one show to rule them all.
But Dave was sad about not having a last show, so we basically decided the next time he's about to bore and basically really and you sit down and it all just pours out. That'll be what
the last one, right? So we're going to wait until he has it. Okay, so that was one thing, and the other is that
we're 2 hours from now.
Could be anytime.
What are the odds of that, Dave?
Are they a volcano?
The minute we can teach Dave how to have Worst Show Ever episodes while his family is home, like stealth. It's like he's smoking while hiding it or something. Like he's just gonna walk around with like a mobile setup and just like, hold on, I gotta go to the bathroom, and then rants for a while.
Dryer sheets and a paper towel.
Yeah, just blow through it. So the thing I wanted to mention is that we are going to start recording these live again.
Woohoo!
And currently April 26th is when we think we're gonna start doing that again. I'm pretty sure on that. I don't want to commit like firm.
And you're in for a treat.
But because we're half-assed sorts of guys, that we'll do it most Fridays at 2 p.m. Central Time, most. But I'm sure there will be some where we have to change it or whatever, and Dave will tweet it or something that you guys won't see. But that, in general, that's the plan. And the link will still be sterlingandstone.net/SSP for Story Studio Podcast. It's the same link as before if you did it. And you'll just be able to watch us live and comment, and that'll be really fun to return to. 2 p.m. Central on most Fridays.
We really should have found another title that incorporated two P's, because I still can't get SSP down. I'm still thinking of this show as SSP.
I think the SPP link will also redirect to the same place. Call it the Dave contingency.
Speaking of PP, I was editing one of Dave's stories this morning.
Wait, hold on. Is that there bodily functions in it? Somebody stops?
No. Yeah. This is awesome. So Dave's become aware of his fetish now. He knows that every
fetish.
every
Dave in the piss.
Yeah, every single book has someone pissing. Like, it's just a thing. And so Dave's become aware of this. So today I'm editing something.
Because you made me aware of it.
Somebody's about to take a piss, and Dave.
But they stop?
Yes, they did stop. They're going, and they're like, okay, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go home.
Wow, how Freudian.
Right. That's amazing.
When they say they're not going to piss, they're going to go home. Do they also take their ball and go home?
So they don't piss. And then Dave leaves a comment, and he's like, I'm just teasing the pissing now. Right? So then the guy gets pulled over by a cop, and he has to piss the whole scene. So now he's using it as an adjective, right? Which is kind of amazing. And then he gets home, and he pisses, and Dave goes, I lied.
Because I said I wasn't going to piss.
He's going to build up to the climax of most books are going to have urination during them. What are you doing right now? I'm trying to have a climactic scene.
Yeah, he should have a character that actually doesn't piss for the reader, like the entire book. But at the end, he's so scared he pisses himself.
There you go. That's what we call dramatic irony. So do you want to hear my my something whatever? It's not really something cool. It's just something that I was thinking about.
Something whatever is way
Something marginal.
Something acceptable. So you know how? Okay, so a little bit of backstory is we're pitching a TV series now, like a comedy, probably be network, and there's a whole thing there that I won't go into. But we started talking about.
God, I hope they don't listen to this show.
No, I think if they did, it would probably dramatically increase our chances. Considering, Dave, you actually don't know about this. We'll tell you as soon as we get off, but you'll dig the fuck out of it.
So the punchline here is that we started to look at like what works in a pilot, because the pilot is really, that's your chance, right? You can. I'd love to see it. It's probably like the first and second page of Google search results. Like it's probably like, you know, people either make it, if they make it from 1 to 2, episode 1 to episode 2, they probably make it like a full season. But a lot of people probably don't even make it to 2 because the pilot screws them. So we started talking about like great pilots and what they have in common, and Sean raised Working Moms as a really good pilot, and it was just like this magical pilot that like introduced all the characters in the right way. It has this really clever opening scene that just really kind of draws you in.
Yeah, the first 3 minutes of that show is pretty genius.
And that was an example of a good pilot. And so I watched a show last night that had been recommended, and I was like, oh my God, this is the exact opposite. This show may get good, but what the fuck on this pilot? I don't give a shit.
Comedy or drama?
Drama. But are you going to try and guess? Because I don't feel like you're going to be able to, but feel free.
No, it seems like a waste of time.
Okay, Russian Doll. Did you see it?
Yeah, no, I saw the whole
Did you like the pilot?
I don't remember because I watched them all. Like, we just binged it.
It's just a bunch of shit that happens. Like this is a spoiler for the pilot of Russian Doll, but it's a time loop. She keeps dying. And we watched the trailer because, you know, Netflix forces you to watch the trailer if you stay on it for 3 seconds. But so
I think you can turn that off.
Not that I've seen, and believe me, I have tried. But if that's true, somebody tell me, because I fucking hate it. It makes me neurotic. Hold on, I can't stop and look at this. I have to keep swiping, or the damn thing's going to come on. I'll try to read it in 3 seconds. But the preview or the trailer looked really interesting, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. You see how she's working these iterations of what's she going to be up to. But the actual pilot itself, I think, has 3 loops. Like, I think she dies 3 times, and it just kind of ends. And it's just a bunch of shit that happens, and they don't establish anything really terribly interesting other than the fact that she's in a time loop. But
that's because it's not a pilot. That's not really a pilot because it's not a recurring.
It's not a pilot?
It's not a pilot. There's a difference between a pilot and an episode 1 of an anthology where there's only going to be 8 episodes total.
Okay, well then it didn't. Then I would still argue that first installment, whatever they call it, its job is to get me to the second. And I'm very much. If it hadn't been so well recommended, there's no way I'd watch the second one.
Absolutely, I agree that it is its job, but it has a fundamentally different job than a pilot, where a pilot is like supposed to establish all the characters and kind of establish who they are for a long running thing. And this is more like chapter 1 of a book, right? It's an 8.
But in chapter 1, we want to get them interested. Right. I agree what you're saying about construction.
Yeah, but chapter 1
very much. I was just like, okay, so it's fundamentally interesting to know that she's in a loop, but I knew that when I started. I don't care about these people. I don't particularly like them. I don't know a hook beyond the obvious hook, and it just made me go, what the fuck?
Have you watched any more?
No, like I said, I wouldn't watch more because I was so bored by it, except that people have said it was really good.
Open with a 4-minute piss scene.
They really should.
I agree. Or a school shooting, right, Dave?
Right.
Yeah, that is a way to open every pilot.
Okay, Dave, why don't you use something cool for to explain one of the projects that you have coming up right now?
I didn't know we were going to do a round robin, but I'm excited about this. If
this is cool, and I got something cool too. So go ahead. What are you going to do? Do you know?
Are you talking about the script?
Yeah. What do you have to?
I didn't know we were talking about that.
Yeah, well, it's very general.
Well, like, I don't know what we can say.
All right, how about I use Dave's?
How about you do it?
All right, so right now, Dave and I are having...
Sounds like that guy who, hey, tell him that great story, and then he tells the whole story.
Yeah, well, there's a scene in the IT crowd where Roy tells Moss, like, they suddenly get really popular, and they're having this party, and all these people are down there, and Roy's like, he's going to go get a drink, so he's like, Moss, tell him this story about something, and he leaves, and Moss is like, tells a story about hookers, and he comes back, and everyone's just staring at him, and he's like, What story did you tell?
Yeah, this story.
I don't want to tell the story about the hookers.
No, this story is simple. Well, this story is really simple. So we're shopping white space, or somebody has interest in white space. We wrote a script, which is the first thing that they asked, and they really liked the script that we wrote, except for one thing. Dave, what is that one thing?
Well, it just so happens to open with a school shooting, and apparently,
so
networks wouldn't have that.
Not just networks, Dave. Nobody. In 2019, nobody will have that.
Why?
CI is changing their tagline to more school shootings per book than any other imprint.
Yeah, HBO is like, no, we've already got the Black Wedding. Like, we don't need...
Red Wedding.
Red Wedding.
Great.
Sorry.
White Wedding, I believe, is...
It's a nice day for a red wedding.
So anyway, they have asked us to please reimagine the opening few minutes of White Space, and they could give it a...
And then Dave threw a tantrum.
I've decided I'm going to have it either in a church or a nursery. Which do you think would be better? Preschool?
You're a monster. You need to stop talking.
I'm going to have it in a Walmart. Is that better?
Yes. Okay. So actually, yes, I do.
Well, there is no Walmart on the island in White Space. That would not make sense.
Oh, all right. Well, okay. So my something cool is something that it's been my number one source of enjoyment for the last week, and my number one procrastination tool. Johnny, you know what this is, right?
I don't actually know what you're talking about, but I do enjoy when I guess and I guess wrong, which happens all the time.
Pornhub.
Okay. No. Pitch meetings from Screen Rant, which are just my new favorite thing. Like, have you ever watched these, Dave? I know Johnny has. Have you ever watched them?
No.
Okay,
where are they?
I'm going to send you a few. They're on YouTube. They're so awesome. So you'll love them. You'll love them to pieces. So basically, they're all 5 minutes-ish, right? And they'll take a movie like Bird Box, and the same guy performs. It's just cut screens. So the same guy is pretending to be the writer and the agent, right? Or not the agent, but the studio executive, right? So
needs more piss scenes.
No, he'll say something ridiculous, like the example that Johnny used in Suicide Squad is.
Can I tell it?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so because I love these two, they're wonderful. So they did the pitch meeting for Suicide Squad, and he goes, okay, so there's a big helicopter crash. Oh yeah, it's a really big scene. Well, so that must kill everybody, right? And he goes, no, they're fine. He goes, well, helicopter crash, you'd think that would hurt somebody. And he goes, no, it's just really kind of how people get to the ground in this movie.
And every one he has the same things. The studio executive always calls something tight, and then he'll always say
tight, hella tight.
He'll say, well, that doesn't make any sense. How does that work? And then the writer goes, I don't know. And then he'll go, well, okay. And then it just keeps going. And
to be fair, this is your pitch meetings for books. So how's it going to work? Unicorn.
Well, but that's why they're funny. And they take even stories.
No problem at all. Barely an inconvenience.
Right. That's the funniest one. So in every single one, there'll be the hard part of the movie, and the studio executive will say, "Well, that sounds hard. How are they going to manage that?" And then the writer says, "Oh, it'll be super easy. Barely an inconvenience." And then he talks about how they're going to do it, and it's always hilarious. And I highly, highly recommend them. And now I'm finding myself, because I've been watching so much of them to procrastinate lately, that I'm hearing myself in my head, I don't know, right? Just as I'm walking around. And yesterday I asked Stacy to do something, and it was kind of last minute. And I'm like, I hope this is okay. And she straight up answered a second later. She goes, it'll be super easy, barely an inconvenience. And then I was just happy. That's my something cool.
All right, so we're going to talk about prison?
I like that we've gone back to wasting 20 minutes before the show topic.
No, I do. So do I.
Are you getting it now?
You guys are looking for a clear takeaway. Oh man, I'm listening to a podcast that actually has its shit together now, and it's such a different experience.
Yeah. So I don't even know how to start that.
Well, tell the backstory. So. Yeah, so for a while that we were trying to schedule things, and this is my favorite thing for a little while. Like
Johnny's
it just made
sadness
me
is
giddy.
over now.
Yeah, I mean, so we'd be like, so we had a regular schedule call, and we would say, okay, so we'll are we meeting next week? Are we meeting next week at this time? And then Sean would say, no, because I'm going to be in prison, and like he would do, like straight face. It wasn't even a joke. So talk about why you were in prison. Like talk about how it all began. Talk about because it started with MMT.
Yeah. Okay. So last year I went to an event in Park City, which was it was really awesome. I would say it's the best event I've been to, and and that's in probably 8 years that I've been going to this kind of mastermind gathering in some form or another. This was not in a room like some of them traditionally are. It was in a hotel in Park City. They just rented the whole place out, so the only people you would run into are all part of this group, and it created a real sense of family. And there was an exercise that we did during the I think it was the second to last day, and there was like a long hallway, and we all went out to the hallway, and there were 150 of us total. And we divided ourselves onto either side of the line. And if there was a statement that you agreed with, you kept your feet on the line. And if there was, if you disagreed with the statement, you would take a step back. And the person who facilitated this it runs a actually it's not a nonprofit. It's I don't know how they work it, but it's a company called Defy Ventures at the time. Her new company is called Hustle 2.0. And what they do is they train incarcerated people in prison who are either in or getting out with entrepreneurial and life skills. And it's just kind of amazing if you see what this company has done, and with especially recidivism rates, which hover like at 80%, which is crazy. And graduates from this program are under 4%. And that's just like, that was all very touching to me. It was all kind of amazing. And they had an offer at the event where you could basically pay to volunteer, which sounds weird. But it's because your money goes directly to the back to the inmates, to raising money for this program. And the program itself is just kind of amazing. So not only do the recidivism rates go way, way down, but just the cost, the math on this is amazing. So it costs $72,000 to house an inmate at Kern County Correctional for 1 year, which is just like ridiculous. Like that's what it costs a taxpayer to put somebody away. And the cost of putting somebody through this program is $500.
So let's see, for $500, we could change people's lives for good, or we could spend a whole lot of money. What do we do?
So they get there's a lot of courses that have been, created, like Harvard Business School has courses. Seth Godin has created some marketing courses for this program. And I just really wanted to go. I thought it was important to just we're storytellers, right? We're seekers of truth. And if we want to tell stories, I did not know this at the time at all, but I do think the universe works in some very, very, very cool ways. But when I signed up for this, I had no idea that Johnny and I would be writing a movie that is a prison movie. It takes place in a different kind of prison, but still a prison. And some of those themes that we're going to be exploring right now, starting a week from Monday, are everything plays together. And over the last several years, more and more and more, month by month even, I feel more and more driven to experience things because it shows up in my writing, it shows up in my leadership, it just shows up in my art. And so, it shows up in the way I think about business and being more, community minded and that kind of thing. So I didn't really have to think about it. I had to buy it and then hope that Cindy wouldn't be like, uh-oh, what did you spend money on this time? But of course she never is. So I don't even know why I thought that for a second. And that was in September. And then the actual event wasn't until last week, which is at this point, it was the last week of March. So I had a lot of time to not know what to expect at all. And the only times that I asked anybody, oh, what do I expect? don't expect anything. Like that was the answer I got.
One tip: don't, if anybody offers to toss your salad, no.
Thank you for that, Dave. Yes, well,
that's one of the things they tell you when you register when you get in.
So I went. It was a few day event. We did something else on Monday that was just kind of a fun little thing, especially if you write sci-fi. It was a cool sideways adventure, which I actually think I can say what I did. I just can't say what I learned. But we went to the Hyperloop, which for Richard Branson's Hyperloop, and we went to the design factory and saw a bunch of stuff, and it was really, really cool. And then on the prison day itself, we got picked up at it was early. We had to be in the lobby, and we boarded the bus for almost a 3-hour ride.
Did you have to wear the prison jumpsuit or no?
No, in fact, dress code was super, super strict. So, the women were all in like dresses to their ankles and, like no heels, and it was just very, very conservative. And
did you have to hide your nose?
No, that was
very
okay.
phallic.
Could be used as a shiv.
Could hurt somebody.
That's okay, but no, it's
shivved by nose.
It was Cindy got my dress code, and she's like, "You're all set. You have everything you need." And I was like, "Oh yeah," because it says like the guys, you can't wear denim, so they suggested khakis. And
wait, why not denim?
It's very sexy.
Because you're trying to make us look as different from the inmates as possible.
Okay.
So that they can target you in that fresh meat scene we see in prison movies.
So you're kidnapped first when this riot happens.
Well, the people in the towers need to know who is who.
Shoot.
Right?
Oh, okay, all right.
Right, and no, like I'm serious. Like it was real sober going in, because we got warnings like, "Okay, if you hear gunshots, hug the wall."
I'm glad I wasn't there with you. We would have been.
It had to be wonderful imagining Dave there.
No, I cannot imagine. Like they
would not have been serious.
Dude, like I cannot imagine. I like actually imagining you going through this would just be hilarious. Like I can't fathom it. But we had to get warnings. Getting even out of the facility, they came back on the bus and everybody had to give their IDs, which was like a triple check at that point. But it makes sense. You're leaving a prison.
Did they check your nose to make sure you didn't smuggle any small people out?
Yes, they at both nostrils actually.
Okay, all right.
So I would say the biggest surprise hit me immediately and reframed the whole kind of thing. So
Sean had a shiv in his nose.
Hey Dave, remember when you worried about this show being
Sorry, go ahead. I'm ruining a good topic. Go ahead.
So I expected sadness. I expected sorrow. I expected desperation. And while that was definitely the vibe of the facility itself, it's all gray, it's all concrete, there's nothing growing, and there's barbed wire. And it's odd too, because on the way there, you're driving through some of the most like majestic farmland where like all of California's commercial, produce is grown. And then you get to this prison that's just like the opposite of vibrant life. And so I expected, like a sadness. And they lead us through security, and then we go into a gym, and immediately there's like, Ludacris is blasting from, the speakers, and all of the guys are like, whoa, and they're just like pumping their fists, and there's like a tunnel, like they're both on both sides, and everybody's supposed to run through while the music is whooping, and they're all hollering, and they put lays on our necks when we came in. And it had this like immediate...
Did you have to show your tits? Oh wait, no, that's beads. Never mind. Go ahead.
Yes, there were no tits shown, Dave. But yeah, it was an immediately like celebratory experience, and I realized like in that second what I should have realized before. It just shows you how much you're in your own shit, right? Like I'm coming in there with my perspective. Of course they're going to be sad. Of course it's going to be sad. Oh my God, these people weren't sad at all. They've been waiting for this day forever. They're super hyped. They're so excited. They're going to get hugs all day. They're going to get to tell their stories. They're going to get to talk. They're going to get advice. This is like an awesome thing for them, not a sad thing at all. And that framing coming in there, it just so reset me so immediately.
And there's the lull.
That's the lull. Well, I mean, I think the question is, what did you take from? Okay, so first of all, why did you go? I mean, we know why you went based on what you already said, but why? Because there was a deeper thing. Like as a storyteller, there's a reason that you went. And then what did you get out of that? Like, did you fulfill what you went for?
Yeah, absolutely. I went for, I wanted to feel more human. You know, I feel like I'm pretty in touch with my emotions. I think I think I have a practical view of the world and myself and how I see in it. I think I feel deeply, but I don't think I have enough experience. I think I've had a lucky life. You know, I think I'm more fortunate than most. And, you know, I actually it's funny, this is all really fresh because I just finished writing about this, like literally this morning. And so there's a few stories there that I can tell, and I kind of don't know which one to tell. So Johnny, you know the actual punchline, my biggest takeaway. But I kind of want to save that for the end because I think that it's better at the end. So there was something that, like, I was actually one of the 4 people who closed. There was between 70 and 75 of us volunteers, and they divided the room into the inmates were referred to as mavericks, which I loved. Like, it's, you know, very humanizing compared to something like prisoners, like, which is just ugly, and the volunteers, which were all the entrepreneurs. And so there was, I definitely closed that out, and that was a hard thing to do, but I felt like it was necessary. Part of it was because one of the 4 mavericks who were, you know, closing down addressed me specifically, and I felt a need to address that back. But also because at the end, so everybody paid to get into the event, and that's how they raised money for the program. And then at the end, they raised more money from the program for the people in the room. And the people in the room are really just, they're the best. They're really, really generous entrepreneurs. But I actually couldn't give any more than I already did. You know, just where I am right now, the travel and the cost of doing the event, and it was all I had. So the minimum that you could donate was more. And so, like, I especially felt like I wanted to at least use my words, which I had those. And so
in spades.
Right, I have plenty. I could do that. So Johnny, you did hear a lot of these stories. By the way, this last Monday was our Freedom Day. So Johnny and I hung out all day, and he got to hear these stories, and we went to a deprivation tank, which was also fun to imagine Dave in. And we saw the movie The Beach Bum, which is, like, we don't recommend it to anybody, but it was the best movie for us.
It would have been awesome, Stoned. So we decided that Dave would probably be very into the deprivation part, the sensory deprivation part, the isolation part, not into any of the rest of it.
Right. If he could just turn his office into a deprivation room.
I have a Freedom from Humanity Day.
It was really dark. You didn't have to see, hear, smell any bullshit. You were just by yourself, but then you were also a little claustrophobic and in a public space. Sensory deprivation thing, because I don't have one in my house or anything. Like, I went to a place.
Yeah, we went to, it's like, I think it was called the Zero Gravity Institute, maybe.
Yeah, which was recommended by somebody we know.
So which of those stories did you like the best, Johnny, or do you think it's worth sharing?
Well, I mean, the one, because you were kind of one-on-one with the guy who you mentioned, you know, called you out, mentioned you, and just sort of the idea of how life can turn on a dime, and, you know, what that was all about.
Okay, so I'll stick with this guy. That's a great idea. Okay, so this is another example of I actually have a couple examples that I really like of just the universe being really in tune that day, right? So first of all, there's 70 plus volunteers, 70 plus mavericks. And when we came in, before we got security, we had to get name tags. And, you know, that thing they do in preschool where, you know, you're picking an adjective or something before your name to describe yourself, and it's the same letter. So I was storytelling Sean.
Okay.
All right. And I'm right across from Reliable Ralph. And Reliable Ralph.
He could have been Wreck-It Ralph.
That starts with a W.
I know, but it has the same sound.
It does. If he had balls, he should have tried it. You know, the exercise, it's two circles, one within the other. And the exercises were, you know, looking at each other in the eyes, right? Like you were holding eye contact. And just for context, this was, these were dangerous criminals. I mean, this was, or they were, that's why they were put away. You know, you've got
they're on serious charges. It's not necessarily, they're not necessarily as dangerous right now or anything like that, but that's why they were put in. Right. This is murders and violent crimes. Right. So 60%. Are you on board yet, Dave? A lot of face tattoos. Damn it, I forgot what I was going to say. You were talking about sitting across from Wreck-It Ralph. Yeah, I was sitting across from Wreck-It Ralph, and he says, "Oh, storytelling Sean, are you a writer?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, we have a lot to talk about." And he tells me that you know he's been writing. He's been writing the whole time he's been in there, which is over. I
killed a writer.
And that's what I was going to say. 60% of the room was serving life sentences, and many of them without parole, without possibility of parole. But they still were in there. They're still trying to learn and better themselves. And
so what do they do with their skills if they're never going to leave? Better themselves
because it's better than you, right? Like you're a better
I thought it was specifically for like, you know, training them to live on the outside business and stuff like that.
Well, it is. But they still want those
They're going to escape.
they want to know, like, because it's not just entrepreneurial stuff. It's like Johnny would totally get this. It's all like story solution stuff. You know, it's like know who you are, so that like the first exercise we have, and this is where I met Reliable Ralph, was you're supposed to tell, they were supposed to tell us where they came from, you know, who they were, who they are right now, and who they want to be. Okay. Right. And whether you leave or not, you can be who you want to be. Right. These are just four walls, but these are people who want to open their minds and be the best they can be. And it was shocking at how many people had a version of Ralph's story. So anyway, Ralph tells me that he has 1,000 pages on his fantasy novel written. And that's just kind of amazing because he can only write when he can afford to get a new ink cartridge or ribbon for his manual typewriter. So it's taken a couple decades just to get those pages. So like that in and of itself.
Someone needs to get Ralph a Chromebook.
Yeah. Ralph needs, Ralph needs a lot of stuff. I asked him if he's ever read a book on writing or craft. He said no. They don't have anything like that in the library. They just have a few junk food books.
Did you give him a copy of Yesterday's Gone?
I am going to send Ralph some books for sure. But anyway, like I think it's kind of amazing that out of all the volunteers and all the Mavericks, I immediately get put directly across from the guy who wants to tell stories, the guy who wants to write. And his story is really sad. And unfortunately, it's just not that unusual. So Ralph, when he was 13 years old, his dad gets arrested for being, a junkie, possession, and goes away. I think it was something violent there too, because it was for a long time. Like he was away. So then he's with his mom, who's even more like super junkie, and he's kind of on his own. And what do you do when your mom's a junkie and you live in the ghetto and you're on your own? You join a gang. That's how you stay safe. So he joins a gang. He's 13 years old, and when he's still a kid, they're breaking up something that they're doing something wrong. I don't even know what, but an officer comes to break it up, and Reliable Ralph, assaults the officer. And that's like probably the number one thing you're not supposed to do to an officer is assault them. So he gets in trouble,
or pee on them,
or pee on them, unless it's like a 4-minute scene, then it's okay. Then it's
or they
fun.
Ask.
Or they ask, right. So he ends up doing his time. He gets out and he decides, okay, I don't want to do this. I need to look out for myself. I need to protect myself. He leaves the gang, but leaving a gang is a hard thing to do, right? You're always worried about your back now because they don't let people leave. So he starts carrying a gun. He joins the wrestling team so he can stick up for himself. He does well and he gets a wrestling scholarship. Now he's going to go and wrestle professionally and clean everything up. He's waiting at a bus stop. Some guy vaguely knows, picks him up, offers to give him a ride.
Never getting a ride never getting a car with anybody.
Well, that is a good.
Not even your Uber.
Because this guy takes reliable Ralph to a park and he tries to rape him, and Ralph is armed and he shoots the guy. And at this point, he's a known associate of a gang member, and he has assaulting an officer on his record, and for a guy in that situation, like there's zero chance he has a lawyer. Like it's just part of the system. He's down, and he's been in there now for I think it's 24 years. So he's my age. Like the dude is my age. He's been in prison. He hasn't had a visitor in 20 years. We during one of our conversations, we kept ending up. Yeah, we just end up talking to each other, and there was one time where we had to. Put our hands on their shoulders and just like look into each other's eyes while we're talking to these stories. And at the end, this is what Johnny was referring to earlier. He stood up. He was one of the four, and he pointed to me and he said, "That man made me feel more seen and heard than anyone in my life." And he cried earlier too. And he said that's the first time he's cried in 20 years. He can also break dance
and then stitch him.
I did.
Knew Dave was going to go there. Boom.
He can also totally break dance, which was really fun to watch. So that's a guy who just, it's hard to think he's ever had a chance. And so when we were at the line, that was the most illuminating part, because it was one thing to do this exercise in Park City with, a room full of successful entrepreneurs, and you could see how human we all were by those questions and how similar we all are. But doing it at the prison with the Mavericks was an entirely different experience, because there were so many questions. Like, here's a few. I'm a natural born hustler. All right, you're not going to get an entrepreneur in the world who doesn't consider themselves a natural born hustler, right? You're not going to get another one that really struck me is I'm known for my worst mistake. Right now, that's something that all the prisoners can raise their hand for, and but all of us, no, we're not. Like, I'm not known for my worst mistake. And here's a story. This is very relevant. So I'm 18 years old. And I'm driving with my best friend, Jimmy, and he's home from UCSB. And we're going to go play Virtua Fighter 4 at Irvine Spectrum. And if you know Irvine Spectrum, if you live in Southern California, it's just a nice area, right? Irvine's very, very nice. And I'm in my shitty old Honda Civic, and I'm with Jimmy, and we're going to get as stoned as we possibly can and go play Virtua Fighter 4, because that's the best way to play it. That's our plan. And so we've been smoking ever from Long Beach to Irvine, which is a 45-minute drive. All right. The car has to be reeking. We're right outside of Irvine Spectrum, about to turn in. It's about to be Virtua Fighter 4 time. And I see with the lights behind me. I pull over and we're like, fuck, this is a problem, because I know this car must just smell. Like, there's no way I'm going to roll down the window, and what the hell are we going to do? Jimmy's like stashing the shit under the seat and just like, damn it. I roll down the window. The cop comes up and he says, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" And
because I'm high as fuck.
I said no. I asked if I was speeding, and he starts to answer me, and the smell visibly hits his face. Right? He's like, he starts to answer, and then it's like he gets walloped by the scent, and he goes, "All right, which one of you is smoking weed?" So I immediately took responsibility, because like I was just in a place in my life where it didn't matter to me the way it would have mattered to Jimmy. He was in school, like it would have fucked him up. Like whatever for me, I'll roll with it. So we get out of the car, they make us sit on the curb, they go through the car, and they end up with, they confiscate my rolling machine and a little pipe. And like you probably both know this about me, just knowing my personality, that I didn't have a tiny amount of weed. And it's not because I smoked that much. I actually didn't at the time or any time that much. The point was that I didn't know somebody who sold it. I didn't have a regular hookup. So whenever I found somebody, I bought the maximum that I could buy. So I didn't want to run out. So we had it all. Like I was with Jimmy, I had my entire stash. And so like, this is like, there's enough for intent to sell. Like it's not okay that I'm all of a sudden sitting on the curb.
And if you were a few shades darker, your ass would have been in jail.
That's my point exactly. So one cop went to UCSB. So him and Jimmy are like yucking it up about how awesome UCSB is and what a great party school it is. And they basically just laugh. They take all of our weed and they give me like the least, like a total slap on the wrist. I had to take care of my registration, which was why I got pulled over. And I had to go to I think it was a 3-hour diversion course on a Saturday. And that's it. It disappeared from my record. Nothing, no consequence. Now, if you had moved me from Irvine down to Santa Ana and, changed my complexion, I could have gone immediately to jail. And that's how I closed.
You had to gang up.
Yeah. I mean it changes.
You are a target.
Immediately. But that changes everything. That context changes everything. And that was what I wanted to say. That is my biggest takeaway, is that the line between us is really, really thin. If you look at the DNA of, criminal behavior and the DNA of an entrepreneur, entrepreneurs don't have respect for authority. We're constantly questioning the rules. We're crafty. We think we can make it up as we go along. And if you took away, okay, what did I do after school? I read. There was a Walden Books right around the corner from Rainbow. So I filled my brain constantly. If I didn't have that, where would I have gone? What if you take away one or both of my parents? What if you throw me into, really extreme poverty? What if you change the color of my skin or my neighborhood or any of these things? Okay, I can easily see how my brain and my makeup with totally different circumstances, you don't have me meet somebody like Cindy when I'm 20 years old who becomes such a strong compass for me. But, somebody who's like maybe really driven by money or and I'm still really poor. You just change all my circumstances, but you give me the same brain and the same way of problem solving. It's fundamentally different. And I think I intellectually...
You were hustling on the playground. I mean, I could easily see you hustling, selling drugs if the situation was different.
You are lucky that a Target guy with the carts never crossed your path and
I know
a different reality, because you'd be like a drug kingpin.
No, it's true. I'm not kidding. I've thought I thought of that when I was a kid. I wonder what selling drugs would be like, because I like the hustle of it all. So here's an example of someone from this program. They started selling drugs in New York at 12 because they natural hustler. They just didn't have family, but you could go on the street and sell. So by the time he was in his early 20s, he was a kingpin, and he went down, and he had over $2 million in cash in his apartment when they took him. He went to prison. He graduated through this program, and now he owns a chain of fitness centers with 14 locations, including the first one that just opened up in London. So that's a guy who's he's a natural hustler. He's a business builder, right? If you could build to be a kingpin from the time you're 12 on, that's not everybody can do that. Just because you are willing to break the law doesn't mean you can scale, right? But I think that, I feel like I intellectually knew that divide was pretty small, but being in a room made it all feel so very human and made me understand it on a much more primitive level. And that is what I wanted to take away, is an understanding of what it means to be human and how much circumstances actually matter, because that's a truth I'm going to want to revisit in what I write for the rest of my life.
Well, yabba dabba do.
Yabba dabba do indeed.
Wow. That's what you say when you need emotional distance from a situation. Fred Flintstone could have told you that shit.
I've heard that's true.
Yeah. So I guess that's a cliffhanger. We'll find out on the next episode what the hell we're talking about. Yeah. So I guess that's it. But yeah, do remember, hopefully, April 26th, 2 p.m. Central, we should go be our first live show. And we have a really cool guest. Like, we have a guest lined up for that one. And it's going to be really cool. And we haven't had a guest in a long time. And it's going to be a story studio podcast type of guest rather than a self-publishing podcast type of guest like we've had in the past. So it's not like we're going to learn the new way to write, because that's only a piece of what we like. We're telling stories now. So that'll be really cool. I guess that's it. So thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Adios.
Peace.